I was just like, whatever. Who knows quarterbacks?
A lot of people actually could name every quarterback.
That's a dumb question.
They really could. It's one of the. I mean, I couldn't. I'm glad you didn't ask me that.
Well.
So, how are we doing today?
What's up, people? Let me see. No. Well, yeah, they're here. Nobody wants to say hi? You know what, though? Sometimes, like yesterday, the comments were delayed. So, whatever.
It's probably your fault. By the way, special thanks to not Brian and Jannelle Mornings. That's us.
What's up, Tara and Mike and Damaris? Saludos, familia. Hola,
I think
Damaris.
it's Damaris, but go ahead.
It's Damaris. Damaris Agosto, and she said saludos.
Oh, okay, never mind. You're right.
Thank you.
Scranton Road Promotional Marketing.
Better.
They are the creators and sponsors of the Brian and Jannelle I'm in the Family travel mug, 3rd edition, and also sponsors of this here particular broadcast. Thanks to Scranton Road Promotional
Amora,
Marketing.
Sheila, Pamela.
Everybody's checking in now?
Yes.
Good. Good to see you people. Scranton Road Promotional Marketing, if you got any sort of marketing, promotional material stuff you need to do for your work, your church, whatever it is, you better go there. It's a ministry. So when you invest in getting the stuff for your company, you're also, as they say, investing in the city.
That's right.
Because they're a Cleveland company. ScrantonRoadMinistries.org, ScrantonRoadPromo.org.
Thank you. Amora says, unfortunately, I would not know the quarterbacks quickly either. Thank you. Who knows that? We're busy with some other stuff. Mike, Fiola, what's up?
So we brought up this issue. There was a big news story yesterday and then again this morning.
Yeah.
That according to Johns Hopkins University, not Brian, so you don't need to yell at me about this number. Someone's already gotten mad at me about the number.
Yeah, he got checked while he was on air, and we weren't even really talking about it.
But I'm just going to go with Johns Hopkins.
Topic.
Okay, if you want to go over to Johns Hopkins, walk around the halls and go, all you people don't know what you're doing. Like, you want to go look at the doctors at Johns Hopkins University, the nurses, be like, you're all a bunch of fools, you're a bunch of liars. Go ahead, you do that. But I'm going to take their word for it.
Okay.
They say that we just surpassed 1 million deaths globally from COVID-19. Specifically this morning, when I printed this off, just before 6 a.m., it was 1,002,129 deaths globally.
Mm-hmm.
And 33 million cases confirmed that people had it. Now, the U.S. deaths, right now in America, we are at 205,000 deaths and some change, which is odd with people's lives to say it that way. Let me be more specific. 205,085 deaths in the United States. And I feel like we got to pause in this milestone and talk about it for a minute. Because I don't know about you, but I'm sick of COVID.
I'm sick of it. More particularly, my kids are sick of it.
No, my kids are sick of it too.
The 2 teenagers especially. But when the 6-year-old, I told Giselle, oh my gosh, these kids, how are they going to remember this time? When the 6-year-old, like, let's say she'll say, let's go to the science center. Oh, it's closed. COVID messes up everything. Corona, like that's the word, Corona. You know, and it's like, oh my gosh. But the teenagers are really struggling. You know, and I look at them and I'm like, man, like in the more extreme cases, I could see how it's messing with people's mental health. Because I see hints of it. I mean, they're fine, but it's not, like, it's messed up. And then you think about, remember high school, how it just flew by?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, this is about to be their high school's, like, years. And, like, high school is 4 years. But really, when you getting around, it's like junior, senior year. So it's because you, like, oh, goodness.
Oh, yeah. No, I was looking at my school district's homecoming week information. They sent it out. My daughter's a sophomore. And homecoming's a big deal. But really, what's the big deal? The big football game and the dance.
Yeah.
No dance.
Yes.
Not everybody can't go to a football game.
Yeah.
So that's annoying. But then it's even little things. My oldest daughter had a job interview yesterday. And I'm doing job interview basics with her.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, Dad, COVID, do I shake his hand when I meet him? I was like, oh gosh. Normally you go for the firm handshake and the eye contact. Boy, you could ask if he shakes hands. You could, hey, it's COVID, so I'm not going to shake your hand.
Yeah.
Like, it's little things like that. And then it's also just, my wife and I are sick of doing online learning at home. Sick of it. I'm sick of it. Makes me mad. And there's people who are still mad at Governor DeWine, they're mad at President Trump, they're mad at every governor or none of the governors or some of the governors because
Some people
all they
are.
did.
Oh, sorry. All they did what?
No, just to the economy.
Yes. And then some people are mad at teachers. And then, like, people in my neighborhood page keep reminding people, like, dude, it's not the teachers you got to be mad at. Like, we don't know who to be mad at. It's like, what have we done? That's what the feeling to our society. Like, our everyday life is completely flipped over.
And I get that because we feel that way personally.
Yeah.
And I also get it that some of you might be saying, we went through all this mess and you told us there's going to be all these deaths across America. And it's a fraction of what you said it was going to be.
Wait, hold up. That doesn't work too well because it's like, wasn't that the point to reduce the numbers? So why are we mad that the numbers are reduced?
Well, but because the CDC, as they learn more about the virus, have changed some of their guidelines and stuff. So people like, you all know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do all this. Be more like Sweden. Like, if you want to have an intellectual argument about some of the decisions that were made, I think that's a legitimate thing to do. But here's what I'm fearful of for Christians who remember we are Christ's ambassadors, as it says in 2 Corinthians 5:20. We're representing the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Savior of the world, who values human life. Anything from Proverbs 31:8, which is open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all those who are destitute. That's valuing the lives of the vulnerable and such. It's also anything from Psalm 139, where it talks about how the Lord knit me together in my mother's womb, David writes, right? So what we can't do is say things like, 1 million deaths? Only 1 million deaths? That's it?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. We've only had 205 deaths. Oh, wow, that's not something we ought to be doing. In fact, whether you like it or not, I'm going to trust Johns Hopkins for their data. So I looked up what are the flu deaths annually, because everybody's always like...
Yeah, that one comes up a lot.
People always like, oh, flu's worse than this. Flu.
Right.
All these people, way more people die from the flu. Okay, so we just passed 1 million global deaths. Globally in 2017, a high year for flu deaths. In 2017, across the world, there were 650,000. So we've had more deaths globally already in 9 months than we had in all of 2017 from the flu. What about the U.S.? We have 205,000 U.S. COVID-19 deaths. U.S. from the flu annually, anywhere from 12 to 61,000 deaths.
What? So why is it that people keep saying the flu's worse, the flu's worse?
Because everybody wants to play with numbers. But again, here's my caution for you. Do you feel good if you go, oh, well, and the other end of it, only 61,000 people died of the flu? And we already got 205,000 deaths in the U.S. from COVID.
Wow.
Did you just say did Brian just say only 61,000? Let's get 61,000 people together and watch them all die. Is that a good representation of the kingdom to say only? I think it's easy to lose sight of people behind numbers.
Yeah.
And that's my fear in this debate is as we talk about ideology and government policy, we start sounding like it doesn't matter if 1 million people died.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't matter if 61,000 people died. I think it matters.
Yeah.
And we look real bad for the kingdom when we minimize human life. But maybe I'm crazy. I've got some more I can share with you, but...
What's up, the people on YouTube? You can comment, and we see your comments and read them. Say hello, and then you'll be a part of the conversation. Patricia says, she's talking about quarterbacks. She's like, who knows quarterbacks? How about 3 Bible prophets? We're actually going to do 5-second rule Bible version. So stay tuned for that. Tony says, good morning, and says, God bless you, peeps. Let me see here. Yeah.
Well, because while you do that, here's a good reminder, too. There was an Associated Press article.
Hey, Tina. Go ahead.
That makes this point from a secular perspective. The title of the article, it's not just a number, it's human beings. Worldwide death total for coronavirus eclipses 1 million. And here's how they write. The milestone recorded by Johns Hopkins University comes 9 months into a crisis that's devastated the global economy, tested world leaders' resolve, pitted science against politics, and forced multitudes to change the way they live, learn, and work. According to Dr. Howard Markle, a professor of medical history at the University of Michigan, he said it's not just a number, It's human beings. It's people we love. And he's advised government officials, by the way, on containing pandemics, and lost his 84-year-old mother to COVID in February. He said, it's our brothers and sisters. It's people we know. And if you don't have the human factor right in the face, it's very easy to make it abstract. Like, only 1 million deaths. Only 61,000. So he said, the bleak milestone, or the Associated Press, is greater than the population of Austin, Texas. So more people have died from COVID-19 globally than live in Austin, Texas. That would be like putting up a wall around Austin, Texas. Everybody dies, and would you say, well, only 1 million people from Austin died? I mean, come on. Only Austin? We got a lot of other people.
Yeah.
How about this one? It's 2.5 times the sea of humanity that was at Woodstock in 1969. It would be more than 4 times the number of people killed in a 2004 earthquake and tsunami in the Indian Ocean. Even then, the figure is almost certainly a vast undercount because of inadequate and inconsistent testing and reported and concealment in many countries around the world of numbers. And the numbers continue to mount. But here's the one that really brought it home for me. When the virus overwhelmed cemeteries in the Italian province of Bergamo last spring, the Reverend Mario Carminati opened his church to the dead, lining up 80 coffins in the center aisle. After an army convoy carted them to a crematory, another 80 arrived in the center aisle of his church. Then 80 more. Just in that church.
Crazy.
Eventually, this crisis receded and the world's attention moved on, but the pandemic's grasp endures. In August, Reverend Carminati buried his 34-year-old nephew with the disease. He said, this thing should make us all reflect. The problem is that we think we're all immortal, the priest said. And it's those stories that remind us that I just think as we as believers, we got to stop this mess about pick any number of deaths and minimize it.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be part of our vocabulary. Any number. If you don't like Johns Hopkins millions, you give me a number. And then are we supposed to cheer for that smaller number?
I think when people do that, though, Brian, it's to, you gotta have, it has to be, it has to match the sacrifices you're making, especially when you're talking about the economy and all of that. So I think what people are saying is not minimizing the lives, but saying, is it worth all the loss over here, including mental health? We talked about in May, just in May, we had like doubled or tripled the amount of suicide attempts compared to all of last year. You know, so people are saying all of this loss for this number, is that fair? Or because if that's the case, you could just do that. Okay, let's do it for the flu every year.
I understand the point, but this is where I think Christian nuance has to come in. What we can't do is trample on the graves of 1 million people to make our point. I think as a Christian, you've got to be nuanced. And you've got to be able to articulate very clearly to people how much those 1 million lives have value. And not use it as like a stepping stone for you to get over to your other point.
Yeah.
We've got to find a way to be able, in one breath, value those 1 million lives, not minimize them. And talk about our ideological disagreements with policy.
Especially, you're saying, because as believers, we talk about being pro-life all day long.
That's
and
right.
Our message, which is important about pro-life, could be devalued in how we talk about this.
Yeah, yeah. And people will even try to find a source with even smaller numbers and say everybody's lying, as if we as Christians should be cheering if it was 10 people. Like,
Yeah.
We've got to look consistent in this. And I'm fearful that we look really inconsistent in our pro-life ethic.
Damari says, I've read that most of the ones that did die had an underlying condition. Can we say they really died of the virus? You were talking a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is something even the most conservative doctors I know of in the Christian Medical and Dental Association have talked about how many diseases there are that you don't die of the disease itself, you die of another thing. Like my grandfather succumbed to complications from Alzheimer's. You don't die from Alzheimer's.
Right, you don't.
You die from conditions surrounding it.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of other diseases out there that are very similar to this.
AIDS
So,
is the same thing. You
yeah.
don't die of AIDS.
You die of complications from AIDS. So the death certificate will probably put AIDS and pneumonia. There's a lot of different things that's the case. So I think if we zero into all that stuff, we're again missing the point. Okay, let's just say you want to believe that it's all made up, there's 0 deaths from that. So that makes the death from pneumonia good? We should be happy that person's gone? We should be minimizing their death in order to prove our point. That's the problem if you're pro-life. I think we've got to be very careful about how we articulate that. Even if, quite frankly, in my mind, you want to be way off in left field in how you view numbers and the analysis of this, you're still going to fall victim to the same problem.
Pamela is saying, also the CDC publishes official death rates and causes. It will be interesting to compare 2017 to 2020 when it's over to see numbers and causes. Regardless of this, you're right. The loss is great annually in terms of, I'm sure she's talking about the flu.
Yeah, and we just sound like callous jerks when we start even, quite frankly, valuing the lives of people who die from the flu more than people who die from complications from COVID.
What do you mean? Valuing the lives?
Oh, we got a lot more people that die from the flu. So then the ones don't count then that died from coronavirus?
Yeah, right.
You're mad at how they're putting it on the death certificate.
Well, y'all don't make people wear masks for the flu. Like, why are we I'm quoting people. Why are you overreacting to COVID? Like, why don't we do this for other things? And quarantine, seriously, all
And
that.
I think if you are only sending that message, which is a legitimate ideological perspective, and you don't bring up the tragedy of people dying from a virus, you look like a crazy, straight up, not Christian. You look like a fool. Because what you're doing is you're essentially indicating that you just don't care about people that died. The one that bothers me the most, that I love to say, even I've got family members who struggle with this, I'll go, yeah, you're right. Who needs those old people in nursing homes?
Yeah.
Let's just kill them all. Now, of course, if you're just tuning in, I don't believe that. What I'm trying to say is, just because you're old and in a nursing home doesn't mean that your death isn't any less sad to someone.
Yeah.
Or that your life is any less value. As a
Yeah.
Christian, the vulnerable in the womb have the same value as the vulnerable in a nursing
Yeah.
home. So, okay, let's just say it's mostly people with underlying conditions and being elderly. So what? Round them all up and kill them? That's what the Nazis did, for crying out loud. We've got to be so careful how we sound when we talk about this.
Sarah says, I literally know nobody who has died of the flu, and personally at least 10 people who have died or had family members die of COVID. Even if you believe all the numbers are skewed high and you accept half of the numbers worldwide, or 1 million people, it's still worse than the flu.
And even more than that, my point would be, again, any number is not good. And so if we work really hard to try to do gymnastics about numbers, when you do it, you're minimizing the death. So if you want to talk about the numbers, I think it needs a preamble, like a preface, for you going, listen, I'm a follower of Christ, and so anytime there's a loss of life, it breaks the Lord's heart, and hopefully that person's saved, I don't know. So I want to be very clear that I'm not minimizing life here.
Mike is bringing up a good point. I don't think anyone's minimizing death. I think what frustrates us all is that not a single thing that the experts have told us hasn't been stated the opposite by another expert. We don't know what or who to believe. It has been very politicized, and it's difficult. You don't think so? Compared to, you look frustrated. Go ahead. We've heard that.
I'm a guy who loves being melodramatic, so
Okay.
I know the point you're trying to make, Mike. If I were in a crabby mood, what I would do is say, really, nothing that they've said? I think it's a little extreme. But also we forget, and see, I didn't even want to go down this road, but it's a novel coronavirus. Yeah, here's the grace I'm going to give to experts. It's a brand new virus. They're learning more about it, and as they learn more about it, sometimes they have to amend things they've said.
Yeah.
Just like in my life, I have to do the same thing when I learn new things.
Yeah.
But the point, again, is if we start doing all that, and we trample on the graves of 1 million people, or like Sarah says, okay, how about a quarter of that? Trample on the graves of 250,000 people to prove your ideological point. Those lives have value.
What's up, Ken, Yvonne, Tina? We see you, YouTube. Comment on YouTube. Yvonne on YouTube says, you both look amazing.
That's true.
She said my hair looks beautiful. Oh, Yvonne. Woo! We need more Yvonne. Regardless of numbers, The tragedies are so sad. It's scary, and we must continue to pray for those diagnosed. Ken says, I think sometimes there's no right answer in public policy, but we should grieve all death, not some.
That's exactly what I'm saying, Ken. And I think when people forget about that point in their ideological argument, and I think you're misrepresenting the gospel when that's the case. Not that you can't make your point. Like, I'm okay with that, as long as we lift up the value of life.
Tara's bringing up the mental health. That's super sad. Those are numbers that are not connected even to that, to the million.
Yeah, and
people
we could
that have
do
committed suicide, like
yeah.
depression. Like if you are already in depression, what it's done to that population in terms of suicide, we're not going to see that in the million. The loss is messed up. Oh.
Yeah, we could have this exact conversation about those numbers.
Yes. Yeah.
And say, we can't forget about the damage this is doing to lives as a consequence of policy decisions.
Yeah.
These lives, but we're not using it as a springboard to prove a point. We're talking about it in their value.
Sherry says, look up the Hong Kong flu. A pandemic in 1968 and 69 killed an estimated 1 to 4 million people.
Isn't that terrible, Sherry?
Worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, yep.
Sarah says, any number is not good, but death is part of life. I agree with you, Brian. But in this particular conversation, trying to understand and weigh the benefits versus the negatives of lockdown. It isn't an easy conversation.
Totally agree, Sarah.
That's
an
the
excellent
thing.
Point to make.
Yeah.
I've got a problem when I hear so many people going, it's only 1 million deaths, or it's only this, or it's only that. That devalues life. We can't have that kind of vocabulary in our discussions. But Sarah, you're right. Complex policy decisions, I don't doubt any of that. Trust me, I'm ready for this whole thing to be over. But I'm not ready to minimize the death of 1 million people in order to move on with my life.
Yeah. People saying, yeah, it's hard. Statistics and numbers all disagree. That's why people sometimes get frustrated. But you're saying, remember, they're not just numbers. Right.
Yeah,
they're
and
people.
The Associated Press did a wonderful job as a secular organization proving that point. And it's a little embarrassing that they're doing better than we are.
Oh, yeah.
Their headline was, it's not just a number, it's human beings. That ought to be the headline of Christian discussion. It's not. Yeah. I don't see that as Christian discussion.
So then your challenge to a believer is just acknowledge the number. Like, because the numbers come up tied to a call to change behavior or do something, right, to stop the numbers. So what are you saying? When you see the number, not just acknowledge, that's what people are saying. We're asked to acknowledge that they're human beings.
Yeah, so never use the word only.
That's it.
That's part of it.
You're not saying because of this number, do this. Because that's where people get lost.
Yeah.
When people say, well, because of this number, put a mask on, that's when people say, hold up. Like, we got all these other things that happen and we don't put a mask. I wear masks and I don't got an issue. I'm just trying to explain to you what throws people off with the number.
And I don't get why it throws them off. Because all I'm trying to say is...
We don't do it for the flu every year. That's what people say.
Maybe we should.
Okay.
In Asia, it's normative if you're sick to wear a mask. Because you don't want to spread to other people.
I've seen Asian people do it here way before we started doing it.
It's normative.
Yes.
So maybe it should be here. But I don't think that's the discussion. It's while you're having your ideological debate, take out the word only. Okay. Because as a follower of Christ, when you say only 1 million deaths, only 1,000 deaths, only 20 deaths, only 10 deaths, that's not how we talk about life.
So you're saying regardless of the behavior that's attached to that and the policies, anything that happens after the numbers mentioned, just make sure you understand that number and the value in that number.
And I think
express it to whoever.
Yes, and I think if you're going to be declaring a position that has the potential to come off as callous about death.
Yeah.
Not that you're wrong, but if you're like, we should all take our mask off and this mask thing is stupid, have that position. But be crystal clear that you're still communicating in the midst of that if someone dies from this, it matters to the Lord and it should matter to you.
I see. Miss Anita said, man, somebody I barely know had me on the phone. Look what I'm missing. Oh, we love you. Mike says one major comparison that is used is the flu in 1917, that millions of people died.
Yep, it did. Many more millions.
But it was a different, healthcare was different back then.
But what we can't do is go, only 1 million died now, and then, whoa, if I rounded up 1 million people and you watched them all die, I think you'd be sad.
Yeah.
And the deaths in the Spanish flu were horrible, and the deaths in this are horrible.
Yeah. And what's sad is when we talk about it on the radio, people express things, like you never know who's listening. And when people describe the way, like people are dying today from COVID, you know, like we could be so careless not understanding. We're looking at 1 million. If my mom died, that one is the world to me. And when I hear you on the radio, like you're saying, and thinking, wow, a Christian, just how hurtful, like there are real people in our churches right here that are listening. You know, think of the one person, that's your life, that's your world.
Or more than that, what I would say is someone overhears you minimizing COVID deaths, right? And they hear that coming from you. One of the common ideologically liberal critiques of Christians is they say, Christians will look at liberals and say, kill the baby, save the whales. Aren't we doing the same thing if we say, save the babies, die from COVID?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we should be able to, like, we can't be the one that sounds like we just don't care if someone dies from COVID. Or if they're old, they're going to die anyway. Or if they already are obese, it's their fault, they eat too much food, they ought to die anyway. I mean, we can't sound like that. We can't.
Yeah, we cannot. And perfect example, Miss Anita, I just received a text from a fellow pastor's wife who begged me not to tell anyone in her church that she is in the hospital with COVID. Her church culture is to not believe in wearing masks. I'm heartbroken for her. That's crazy.
And it's tragic that we can have that's going on because of an ideological debate when there's a life that's in danger. Makes me sad. If you care more about the ideological debate than the life, I don't know that you're in line with Scripture.
That's right. I just want to say, Rob, is he paying you? Like, please. Rob just comes on this morning just to say, thank you, Brian.
My guy, Rob.
Oh, my goodness. Holly's saying, I'm on Team Brian today. Woo! Mike says, when we watch the news or hear radio, normally they specifically state that even one death is too much. And then they go on with their story.
Yeah, and let's take our tip from them. Because I see a lot of Christians not doing that.
She wants you to do. Rob says, just for your info, Jannelle, before we go, Sydney, his daughter, one of his daughters, was cheering for you today during the 5-second rule. She wants you to do your homework for next Tuesday. Yeah, and she's young. It's because I'm, so young.
It's crazy we got 2 ties.
Yeah, what's up with that? That fourth one, that was so hard. Like, what is he doing?
Name one Canadian province besides Saskatchewan.
Ontario. Did you name
2.
Ontario?
Another one.
Ontario. And the one that Toronto's in, which is probably Ontario.
My favorite answer from 5-second rule from her, Ron's like, name 3 things that smell good. She's like, flowers, perfume, and me.
I smell good. Tony says, we're all going to die someday. It is tragic with COVID, but we kill each other on a regular basis, whether it's abortion or murder. What about God's creatures? Just wait until they start dropping the nukes. There's more we need to worry about besides this. Am I going too deep? I'm going to say, you're not go. I get it in theory, but like when we're protecting the house, like, and we're making decisions as a family, my kids are like, we don't want like Len's out there working around a lot of people. Like for Len to get COVID, I'm not thinking about, well, he's going to die someday. I just don't get that thinking. We're all going to die someday, then don't put a seatbelt on. Like, I don't know. I'm sorry.
I'm coming at it from a different tack. I know what you're saying,
Okay,
Tony,
go ahead.
That we're all mortal beings. But what I'm trying to say as a Christian, as an ambassador for Christ, if we truly want everyone to empathize with us on the lives of the unborn and such, we have to be portraying that value of human life in everything we do. So let's say someone at work overhears you minimizing deaths in COVID. I would compare that to your approach would be like going to the wake of the guy that just died on 480. The dump truck hit the sign, crushed his crushed him in his vehicle.
Oh yeah.
You're going to go into that wake and go, hey, yeah, sorry, it's terrible. Well, you know, we're all going to die anyway. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's not so bad, right? Cheer up. We got other stuff to worry
That's
about.
how it can come off, but I'm sure Tony doesn't see it that way. But I think it's the numbers seem impersonal.
When it's someone you don't know,
Yes.
you can say that. When it's someone you know, that would be the most offensive thing you
Yeah.
ever hear. And so how do we know people around us haven't had a loved one die from COVID? And you, like, minimizing the death, it sounds pretty callous. It sounds like going to a wake and going, yeah, well, you know, we're all going to die anyway, so.
Yeah. Tony Gale, you need help. I'm going to help you. She says, I'm not sure whose team I'm on. I love you both. This team. This is the team you go on. If you're a winner, if you're like a multitasker, if you're awesome, you're on this team. So I made that decision for you. Thank you.
Are you finished?
Woo!
You finished?
Yeah.
Here's my coaching for you. Everything she just said.
Woo! Tony Gale in the house. What about Mike? You know, like what he says? He says Team Brunel.
Mike knows the truth, and the truth is that there is no such thing.
Yeah, there is no such thing. Gary, your dude, is here. He loves Team Brian.
Sup, Gary?
Yeah. We love you, Miss Anita. We got to go, Brian. We got stuff to do. We got kids to go to. I do. I got 9 kids in my house. 9. Oh, my goodness.
It's your fault. No one